Domestic football is finally back, so welcome to your next match preview as this Saturday Newcastle travel to the Amex to take on Brighton. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you guys, this is not a fixture I enjoy. I do not enjoy going to Brighton because Brighton are such a good team in my opinion, but I want to start by looking at the Premier League table because all I've been hearing is that Newcastle United are having a bad start this season, but we're literally bang level with Brighton. We're 11th, Brighton are 12th, both played 7, both won 2, both drawn 3, both lost 2, and the only difference between the two is the goal difference. Now, as you can see, Brighton have scored 10, but also conceded 10 this season, and Brighton are a streaky team, if we're being honest. So are we going there thinking we're just going to get turned over? Absolutely not. Can we go there and actually win the game? It's going to be difficult, but there's no reason why we can't. Now, if there's any game I didn't want after the international break, even though Newcastle players had a good, successful international break and will have confidence going into this game, it's Brighton away because Newcastle actually have a shocking record at the Amex. Now, this is our record against Brighton, both home and away since 2021. We've played 9 times, we've won 2, we've drawn 4, lost 3, we've scored 11 and conceded 11. So if that doesn't tell you that these games are defined by small margins and they are close and competitive, I don't know what does. But that list of games doesn't tell the full story because Brighton have never lost in 8 Premier League home games against Newcastle. They've won 3 and drew 5. Newcastle have won just 2 of their last 16 Premier League games against Brighton, with drew 8 and lost 6, a win rate of 13%, which is their lowest win rate against any side they've played in the Premier League 3 or more times. So, may as well just pack up and not go. Let's just not even turn up and give Brighton the 3 points. But being brutally honest, if you offered me a point right now, I would probably take it for a couple of reasons, because our record against Brighton is absolutely abysmal. Tino Livermento's missing, Lewis Hall's missing, and Yankuba Minta is just going to have a field day. He'll be licking his lips at the prospect of facing Dan Burn. But on top of those statistics, Brighton have only lost 1 of their last 11 Premier League home games. They've won 6 and drew 4. And this season, all 3 of Newcastle's Premier League away games have drawn 0-0. So if you are a traditionalist or a numbers man, Newcastle United tend to struggle at the Amex. Let's not even lie about it. What else I'm also not going to lie about? I love watching Brighton. I can't even lie about it. The way they just tactically adapt, how fluid their style is, it's just a beautiful team to watch. But even off the pitch, they've done everything what a promoted football club should have done, unearthing these hidden gems, developing them into superstars, and then selling them for a profit. That's how you grow as a football club. So as a neutral, Brighton actually have a model that a lot of Premier League clubs should follow. Now, I just want to big myself up for a minute because Brighton actually signed a lot of players that I've scouted for a couple of years now. And this is why I watch Brighton a lot, because when I scout a player, I don't just look at him and think, oh, he's good enough, and then forget about him. I tend to watch his career. I like to see how they develop for the good and the bad. Whether for the bad, for example, Ansu Fati. Everybody knew about Ansu Fati when he was coming to the academy of Barcelona. His career hasn't really hit the heights that I expected because of injury, but I still like the guy. I still support the guy. Lamine Yamal. Everybody knew about Lamine Yamal before he made his debut. He's starting to hit those heights as expected. So even for good and bad, I always follow my players. Now, a couple of players, and there is more, that I just want to big up myself a little bit, because let's start with Diego Gomez. In February 2024, I knew he was destined for the Premier League just because of his technical attributes, his physical attributes, the way he drives with the ball. I just thought he had the right profile fitted for the Premier League. I actually thought he was going to go to Southampton as an Alcaraz replacement, but he ended up at Brighton. And then another one, Carlos Baleba. This was around the time when Caicedo was potentially going to Liverpool or Chelsea. At the start of that process, it looked like he was going to go to Liverpool. So somebody asked me, who should Chelsea sign instead of Caicedo? I said Carlos Baleba. Just so happens Brighton sold Caicedo and then signed Carlos Baleba. So I just wanted to big myself up a little bit, but this is why I am so complimentary of Brighton. As you all probably remember, we did go to Brighton last season, get a 1-1 draw. Somebody scored a penalty in the 89th minute, but that day was kind of a frustrating day because we actually created a lot of chances and we could have snatched all 3 points. Didn't really matter at the end because we still got Champions League football. But I think that set the precedent that Brighton can be beaten. Brighton are quite a streaky team. When they're good, they're phenomenal. But sometimes they can miss the mark a little bit. But I want to talk about their team because I enjoy watching Brighton. And the reason being is because they play with energy, high intensity, they're aggressive off the ball, but they're also aggressive in possession. Yes, the perspective is Brighton want to play out from the back. Brighton always play out from the back. But this Fabian Hertz, he's technical now, so is excellent. If he needs to go long, he will go long. Brighton have got many different ways they can punish you. They can beat you on the pace, they can run in behind, they can drop deep and link up play, but they're also directing. They can miss out your press, but they've also got the capabilities and composure and the tactical ability to beat your press and play through the lines. So I actually think Fabian Hertzler is a terrific manager. And after watching Brighton, the way they adapt their formation throughout the 90 minutes is quite fascinating, because they're set up in kind of a 4-2-2-2 formation, but depending on their build-up, depends on their formation. It is fascinating in my opinion. So when they're building up in a low build-up, so what a low build-up is pretty much playing out from the back. They're set up in a 4-3-3 system. That's so they can have two fullbacks that can receive the ball and play from there. But their three-man midfield creates sort of a triangle, and this is what we need to be alert to, because they'll have a number 6 that comes in and connects defense to midfield, but they also have two number 8s that run the channels. This allows them to create optimal passing lanes in the final third, but it also allows them to have more players in advanced areas for them to create better opportunities. So we have to be defensively disciplined. That's not something I worry about when it comes to Newcastle United. We've statistically got one of, or the second best defense in the league this season. Now, when it comes to a high build-up, this is where they invert their fullbacks in the midfield. This just encourages positional rotations between the midfield and fullbacks. So kind of like confusing your press. That is exactly the aim of this. But what they do very well, and this is something Brighton are excellent at, is making and creating third-man runs. This is why João Pedro suited their style so much, because he was the one that dropped deep and invited the centre-backs to come with him. That allowed him to receive the ball, but open up passing lanes for the likes of Minter, Brajan Gruda, whoever's playing on the wings to exploit, but also those two number 8s. They run those channels. Now, what I think will happen is Baleba will be the number 6. And for argument's sake, they start with the number 10 on paper. And if last game is anything to go by, it was Diego Gomez. And then probably Yari in midfield. Yari will be the number 8. He'll run that left channel. Diego Gomez will run the right channel. Carlos Baleba will screen that back line. So the reason why I'm speaking about the importance of this is because Sandro Tonali and Joe Linton and Bruno Guimaraes are going to have to be alert of that. So if we don't track our runners, Brighton are in on goal. But having said that, I've got full confidence in our midfield that can do that. So Fabian Hertz's philosophy and ideas, it's all about numerical advantages, but also third-man runs. So the purpose of their numerical advantages are to adopt different dynamic formations. This allows them to switch between formations and create space and overloads. Now, one thing I have noticed about Brighton is they don't mind their bodies getting forward. They will pick up advanced positions in the final third. So one of their most important and crucial things in terms of their high build-up is literally creating a 5-against-4 against your defenders. Fabian Hertzler doesn't mind giving the license to their midfielders to join into attacks. Now, that's something we need to be wary of, but that's something we can transition very quickly. So if we can overturn the ball and we're quick and sharp and decisive in possession and break quickly, this is where we can punish Brighton. Brighton are very vulnerable to transition moments. Now, the reason why I keep saying Brighton are streaky and vulnerable in transition moments, because this season already, they've beaten City, beaten Chelsea, and they deserve to beat them, but they also dropped points at Everton away, but it was Everton's first game at their new stadium, so you kind of expected it, but they drew it Fulham and drew at Wolves. Those are two games that you'd probably expect Brighton to win. It reminds us a little bit of Newcastle, where they're extremely competitive and very good against the bigger teams, but sometimes they just drop and lack something against these bottom half teams. So let's talk about what Brighton are like defensively. Press from the front, aggressive and press. Brighton have actually overturned the ball the most in the final third and won more tackles in the final third than any Premier League team this season. So what we've got to do to avoid that, no dwelling on the ball, no trying to be clever, playing out from the back all the time, taking that extra touch. If you are playing out from the back, be decisive. Be progressive, play off your first touch. If you're receiving it in midfield, make sure you already know your next step. Don't take a heavy touch where you have to take an extra touch and an extra touch. So what I'm trying to say is just move the bloody ball quickly, because if you can bypass their press, that's where we can be dangerous. That's where Anthony Elanga, Anthony Gordon, Nick Valdemada can link up. Now it's a fun part. Let's talk about Newcastle United, because I made a video yesterday and I spoke about our international break has actually been quite successful for the first reason, no injuries. I'm so happy there's been no injuries or new injuries this international break. Secondly, let's speak about Anthony Gordon, because everything I've seen against Latvia for England, I want to see for Newcastle United. When Nick Waldemar drops deep, gets on the ball, are you trying to exploit that space? Are you capitalizing on the space that's given to you? Same for Anthony Elanga. Now, what I want from Anthony Gordon is making the pitch big at the right time, but also helping and supporting Nick Waldemar at the right time. When Brighton's fullbacks invert, that's when you make the pitch big, because that's where the space is going to be. If Brighton's fullbacks decide not to invert, that's when you tuck inside and support Nick Waldemar, because you're doing two things then. And the same goes for Anthony Elanga. If they're inverting, you're exploiting the space, which forces them to come out wide. But if they're compact in a back four, you're coming inside to drag the defender with you to create space for somebody else to exploit that space. Now, we'll probably have Dan Burn at left back, so he's not going to exploit that space. This is why Joe Linton, Sandro Tonali are going to have to use third man runs to get in behind Brighton. This is something we didn't do against Leeds. This is something we didn't really do against Bournemouth. That's why we never look threatening. So what I'm trying to say for Anthony Gordon, I've seen him make the right decision for England. I want to see that right decision for Newcastle United. So I just want a bit more consistency in his performances. Now, in possession, be decisive like you were for England. Getting the ball out on your first touch and driving to your man. If it doesn't come off, that's okay. At least you've attempted it. The intent, the decision making is all correct. Can you pin your man up, cut inside and get your shot off early like we're seeing against England? I want to see that sort of delivery from Anthony Gordon. Now, as always, it might not always come off, but I'm not bothered about statistics, goals and assists. I'm more bothered about intent. Are you doing the right things? Because if you continue to do the right things, eventually you will get the results. Let's talk about how we can capitalize on Brighton's vulnerabilities, if there is any, because they are technically very good. I can't even lie about it, but Brighton are known for their high press. Be direct, be brave, make the use of space with the ball, miss out the extra pass in midfield, and be a little bit more direct than what we normally are, because that is how you beat a high press. You bait them into the press and then you miss out the pass. If anybody wants to go and see it, I made a tactical video about pressing and how to beat the press and how to create overload, so I will link it at the end. But this is where Nick Waldemar comes in, because I think he can be key in our offensive transitions. Because Brighton tried to press high and really try to suffocate the final third, this is where Nick Waldemar's technical ability can come into play. Somebody that likes to drop deep, link midfield to attack, but we have to get bodies around him, whether that be midfielders, Anthony Gordon or Anthony Elanga, one of them, not both of them, because one of them needs to stretch the pitch. Now, keep on speaking about stretching the pitch. I'm going to tell you exactly why very shortly. When it comes to Anthony Elanga, look, I think he's been better than some people make out, but I just want to see that a little bit more decisiveness. I want to see him more confident exploiting space, because when a player's not exploiting space, not because he doesn't understand it, I feel it comes down to confidence. Again, when it comes to Anthony Elanga, I'm not really too bothered about goals and assists just yet. I don't define a player on goals and assists. I define him on his ability and if he's making the right decisions. And that's the turnaround I want to see from Anthony Elanga. We're starting to see it slowly, but we just needed more consistency. I think he was excellent against Barcelona. He was excellent against Union Saint-Gilloise. So the two Champions League games, coincidentally, has been his best games. Now, can you deliver that in the Premier League? So everything in writing there is just everything I've just said, really. Can we use Anthony Elanga's pace to get in behind, play to their strengths, move the ball quickly after a turnover? Because Brighton commit bodies forward when they're going forwards, but they also commit bodies forward when they're pressing. So they are susceptible to fast breaks when they lose possession. Now, the reason why I always speak about stretching the pitch, making the pitch big, is because this is Chelsea's average positioning against Brighton when they lost the game. This is Bournemouth's average positioning against Brighton when they won the game this season. Now, as you can see, Chelsea are a lot more narrow. They're a lot more compact, whereas Bournemouth stretch the pitch because Brighton are excellent in central areas. Now, if you have a look at our average positioning against Brighton at the Amex last season, funny enough, in this game, I was looking at the statistics this morning. We had more shots, more possession, create more opportunities. So based off statistics, we were the better team. Now, Anthony Gordon didn't start this game. It was Harvey Barnes. Joe Linton didn't start this game. It was Joe Willock. Now, as you can see, number 11, Harvey Barnes' positioning is right next to number 14. So he spent most of his time in those central areas. But what Joe Willock did brilliantly was attack the space. Look at his heat map. A lot of his heat map is in that area where Harvey Barnes is vacated. And this is what I'm talking about. When Anthony Gordon comes inside, We need somebody that's dynamic enough to attack the space. Now it's time to talk about the predicted 11 because I'm torn on this one. I can't even lie. Let's start by talking about the injuries because Johan Wissa, Tino Livramento, and Lewis Hall are out. Jacob Ramsey is back fit. Now, when it comes to Brighton, a few players dropped out their international teams. Diego Gomez was one of them, so he's a doubt. I do think he'll play. Matoma was another one, but he's a doubt. I do think he'll play. Rajan Gruda is another one. He's a doubt. I do think he'll play. But Adam Webster, Solly Marsh, and Joe Veltman are all injured. Now, I actually do believe Brighton have a bit of a headache when it comes to choices because Danny Welbeck's record against Newcastle United, oh my days, I am sick of that guy scoring against us. But I think Jorginho Ruta is one of their most underrated players. So I can't decide who's going to start out of those two, but I do think Mint will be on the right. Rajan Gruda will be on the left, who is also a big talent in himself. And I think Diego Gomez will start as the attacking midfielder. But when it comes to Newcastle, right, we can go two ways about this because we can go our normal 4-3-3 shape, but that means Dan Burn will be playing left back. And Minter, what is he incredible at? He's been one of their most dangerous players this season, just purely on his pace. Remember what I was talking about earlier about making the right decisions off the ball, timing your runs better, making the right choice. Minter's beginning to do that, so I can't even lie about it. Dan Burn at left back scares me because I've said it time and time again. Dan Burn is not left back, but he also, and when it comes to Minter, he must be licking his lips at the prospect of coming up against Dan Burn. Now, the only hope we've got, you've got to have the defensive solidity in Joe Linton. He's got to cover for Dan Burn. And another positive is how well Sven Botman reads the game, but we can't always rely on that. So that's option number one. Now, I also think, and I'm going to put this out there, that somebody like Joe Willock or Jacob Ramsey might start ahead of one of the two Brazilians, just purely because of the fatigue going on international break. But the other option we've got is reverting to a back three. Now, this season, we've played 3 away games. 2 of those away games we'll play with a back three. So with the pace of Tino Livramento and Lewis Hall being missing, will Eddie Howe revert to a back three? Try and be a little bit more difficult to beat. Try and be a little bit more compact. So I honestly can't decide what Eddie Howe's going to do. But I want to know your thoughts. What would you do in this situation? Would you stick to our 4-3-3? Which served us quite well last season at the Amex, because as the statistics show, we were the better team. Or would you revert to a 3 at the back, considering Tino and Lewis Hall are both missing? Look, based off history, this is a tough game to predict. I never want to predict Newcastle losing a game, so my heart's telling me a 1-1, but my head's telling us 2-1 Brighton. But I want to hear your thoughts. Drop your predictions in the below. But if you've enjoyed this video, please support this channel. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, because I'm desperate to hit that 10k. But as always, guys, enjoy the game. Until next time, away the lads.